Hi, Scott. It's great to be chatting with you.
Hey, likewise.
Mate, I want to lead into my questions about the Black Phone by going right back for a moment. I want to tell you that I think that Hellraiser Inferno is one of the most underrated horror films of all time. And you made that.
I love that. Thank you so much.
It really is. And you made that for Dimension, who were notably the biggest horror players at the time. And now you're with Blumhouse, who are smashing it. How do those companies compare from a filmmaker's perspective?
Oh God, they're so different. Dimension was. I did a lot of script work for them, and made that movie, and they were a horrible place. They're horrible people. Bob and Harvey Weinstein are terrible human beings. So I was very, very lucky to even get out of there alive, frankly. And Jason Blum is the antithesis of that. You know, he's my closest friend in this business, and he's very, very protective of creative talent and supportive of my vision in both the pictures that we made together. And he's just the best. He's just a great guy.
Fantastic. I might ask you to sort of elaborate on his work in just a minute, but I also wanted to quickly mention Joe Hill. Like he's become something of an amazing author, and his story itself is relatively short. How much strain from the story did you have to do, and was he involved at any point?
He was involved all along. Cargill, my writing partner, is a very accomplished novelist of his own. So Joe and he had become friends as fellow novelists. But I'm the one who had read the book when it came out. I stumbled into a bookstore 16, 17 years ago and just saw 20th Century Ghosts, an anthology of horror shorts on a wall of horror books. And I read the first story, just standing in the bookstore, and I thought it was amazing. This guy's fantastic. I had no idea he was Stephen King's son, and I bought the book and I read everything in it, and I just thought The Black Phone was such a great idea for a movie, and I always held on to that. And I think I even optioned it from Joe at some point, like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer. I don't remember exactly, but it just seemed like the right time that, when I stepped off the movie I had been working on about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was, I was thinking about trying to take some of my own childhood and do kind of an American 400 Blows set in North Denver. I grew up in this kind of violent, working class neighborhood in North Denver, and experienced a lot of fear, a lot of bullying, a lot of domestic violence, and there was it was just kind of a scary place to grow up. And I was talking to Cargill about it, and we were both. He grew up in a tough neighborhood as well, and we were just really interested in doing something like that. And then we got the idea to combine, the specifics of the world I grew up in with Joe's story, The Black Phone. And so what we did was really everything that's in that short story is in the movie, and there's the core story, but what fills it out are things that are very inspired by real kids that I grew up with, that I knew, and just what life at that time and place felt like. And that those two things combined just seem to really, really work.
Definitely. You're actually playing right into my questions here. It's fantastic because I found, the trailer was incredibly intense, but for a child of the 80s like myself, it really did play into that whole stranger danger fear that was drummed into us as a kid. And I was going to ask you if that was a concerted effort to lean on, I guess for lack of better word, nostalgia?
Yeah, I didn't want to make a nostalgic movie, and I find that most of the movies that TV shows that you see are sort of nostalgic and really looking back not so much on how things were, but how movies have portrayed, childhood in the late 70s and 80s. And I really wanted to make something authentic that, it was all the things I mentioned. There was a lot of fighting. Kids fought all the time. There was a lot of bleeding. Fathers, everybody got whipped by their dads, for punishment. That was the norm. And the stranger danger was a real thing, and Ted Bundy had just come through Colorado and killing women, and he also escaped from, while he was there, and the Manson murders had just occurred. And, my next door neighbor, my friend Chris, came knock on my door one day and said somebody murdered my mom, and his mother had been abducted and raped and murdered and thrown in the local lake. So it's just, there was a real atmosphere of danger that anything could happen at any time. And I grew up on a block of 13 boys. I was the youngest, and so a lot of bullying. That plays a big part in the story as well. And I again, those are all personal things, and there are characters in it that I knew that I really brought into this movie. But it's still Joe's story. It's still all in the service of a core story idea that was Joe's, and what we added were the more personal, emotional character elements. His story has basically two characters, and we've got three major characters and quite a few side characters.
You're right. With the exception of the tragedy of murder, it sounds like we had a very similar childhood. And you're also reuniting with Ethan Hawke and Jason Blum here, and obviously you're a formidable trio. Jason does seem like a really generous producer. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what kind of producer he is and how much freedom he gives you?
I mean, he's, I'm sure every filmmaker has their own experience. In my case, he's just 100% supportive. He just trusts me to make the movie that I want to make. And he on occasion, on just a few occasions, has told me he thought something should be done differently or should be cut differently. And if I've disagreed with him, he's like, it's your movie, however you want to do it. He's never applied any pressure for me to do anything differently than what I wanted to do. So he has a lot of respect for talent. What he's good at is recognizing filmmaking talent. He's good at recognizing good story ideas and marketability of a story idea. But he's not a creative producer. He doesn't think of himself that way. He's not somebody who's in there trying to tell the stories themselves. He's there to try to create the best arena for the storytellers to do their job.
Excellent. And we are about to run the clock out, but I wanted to also quickly ask about Ethan Hawke. He makes some really bold and interesting choices in the roles he's taken on lately, and I did read somewhere that he said he'd never do a bad character before, a bad guy. What motivated him to take this role?
When I offered it to him, that's what he told me. He said, look, I'll read the script, but I really don't play villains. And it wasn't that interesting to him as an actor. And he said, it would have to be something really, really remarkable for me to do that, to play a villain role. And I sent him the script, and I got a voicemail from my cell phone that night that was him with this very menacing voice reading one of the prose lines from the script. And so when I heard that, I knew, he's in. He's going to do this. This is terrific.
That's fantastic. I love that. Definitely can't wait to see the film. The trailer blew me away. So thanks for having a chat. Really enjoyed it. And once again, Hellraiser Inferno. It's in my top 10 all time underrated horror films.
Oh, thank you so much. I really love that film. There's a lot of that was also a personal film in a lot of ways, and it's kind of had a nice little renaissance. People discovered it, and it's always great to hear. Thank you so much.
No worries, and take care.
All right, you too.